Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me, we got Boatin Blake, and we are here to talk about the Big 12 basketball tournament. Um, a little bit of sadness here, a little bit of intrigue because it's the first and only time we've had this mix of teams in a Big 12 tournament. A little bit of sadness because this is OU's last go through. Look, let's just be upfront. Given how the Sooners have looked recently, they probably won't be in Kansas City for very long. But we're excited to talk about it. Blake, a little bit of intrigue with us too. OUTCU opening up the matchup, so that's pretty fun.
I know, at least give us something to care about early on. I know we're probably get into it a little bit more, but I think both of us are feeling pretty pessimistic about our team. So I guess it's kind of nice that you pit the two like pessimism people against one another and like see who can maybe advance one more round. But yes, like I think there's definitely some intriguing matchups early. I think there's still some fun things, even though it seems like the Big 12 tournament, like not as much as on the line maybe as in years past, but I still think there's some intriguing things there, whether it just be good basketball, whether it be just some like resume builders trying to get up a seat or two. We could see that happening this weekend. So I'm always excited. Like daytime basketball rocks.
Oh yeah, it's the best. And we always talk about how March Madness is like one of the best weeks of college or of just sports in general of the year. And it is. It is. Don't get me wrong. But this entire week, just getting constant wire to wire basketball, it's really, really something special. It's really fun. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for the Big 12 and really all the tournaments. I know you've been keeping an eye on some of the mid majors and stuff. So you've been in the mix already.
The mid-major stuff, to just do a quick plug of that. If you just want to watch some good basketball, go over some of those like mid-major semifinals, finals matchups, stuff like that. It's like they play harder in those games than you'll probably even see them in March Madness, just because they have a chance to like, for those mid-major universities, if you make March Madness, that is a huge financial bump for your university, which is already like making not much in the athletic budget. So all teams have incentives regardless. Even if you are the fifth, sixth, seventh best in your small conference, everybody's playing hard. It makes it really interesting. There's always a lot of upsets. It's never like you never see chalk in the mid majors come March when it comes to these conference tournaments.
All you got to do is get hot and you can get
Yep.
in, and if you're really good, like Indiana State, for example, all it takes is you losing and you're done. So
Yep.
it's pretty fun stuff. But let's dive into the Big 12 here. Um, Interesting, obviously, new format. We're starting this thing off on Tuesday now, mainly because BYU cannot play on Sundays, so that's a little odd. Don't hate it, don't love it. Kind of nice to get everything kicked off, but the biggest thing to me, just looking at the first 2 days, it just feels like a parade of like it's BYU who's happy to be here, and then a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of like kind of pessimistic programs at the moment. Like even Kansas, who's the sixth seed. I don't feel like the vibes are very good there. With Dickinson hurt and uh, I'm blanking on the other guy who's really damn good. McCullers, right?
McCullough. Yep.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny because usually, that second day you have a team who you feel like can make a run. I don't really know if that's the case this year or not.
Yeah, the interesting thing about how this like they had to reformat the tournament. It's like when you got this many teams in, we couldn't do it was so nice when you had 10 teams, you have one play-in game of the two worst and then you can go there from just like a typical quarterfinals matchup. This year kind of seems a little bit like a drag in the beginning because like if we were going to go last year's format and had OSU versus West Virginia, that would be a lot better, and then just have it go from there than have these like two first games where you got Cincinnati, West Virginia. If you haven't watched the Big 12 this year, the bottom two are really bad. They are like really, really bad. Most of them aren't even trying. So it's like OSU is going to get rolled by UCF. Cincinnati's going to get roll or is going to roll West Virginia. And then we kind of go into these next matchups, which you're right is kind of filled with a lot of pessimism this year. It's like you go down the list. It's like BYU was projected to finish like close to last in the Big 12 and finished way above their position. OU, I feel like kind of finished about where they were projected. TCU way lower. Texas way lower. I think Texas was like supposed to be second or third. They finished at seventh, and then of course Kansas six. Like Kansas, you're mad if you're number two. You're very mad if you're number six. It's just been, I think that those first 2 days are just going to be like the round of disappointing teams that don't really have much optimism going into March. Whereas, like, once they move on, maybe that's like the kickstart, the spark to really unlock some of that preseason potential for some of these. But yeah, I think you're right there. It's a little bit of a downer year for some of those early round matchups. It just feels like every team there is a little bit upset with their seeding position.
And don't get me wrong, I feel like Kansas, Kansas and Kansas City never, is a really an underdog. They're a team that can get really, really hot. And given that you're going to throw them Cincinnati or West Virginia, I mean, that's a great start right there. And then I believe they would move into playing Baylor in the quarterfinals if they won. So really, they don't really have an awful side of the bracket. So it's a little weird because usually I feel like in the second round, you can see a scrappy Iowa State or whatever. I feel like the scrappy team is kind of Kansas now, which is very weird because that's never them.
Because I'll say, like, they had a disappointing year, but they were still very good at home. It's like when you look at the conference, they only had one home loss. It was to BYU, a team that gets just incredibly hot from three. It's so hard to bury that team just because they love to shoot a lot of threes. And when they can finally get hot, they can get guys into space. It can bring them back into games, but they were really good at home. Like they were disappointing on the road, and they aren't that like elite Kansas team, but we've seen in the past, like they always perform well at this tournament. They have kind of that home crowd energy besides maybe like a K-State, Iowa State. There's very few programs that people actually travel to Kansas City. Plus the fact that they play a Baylor team who a little shaky on the defensive end, like kind of could be streaky at times. It feels like it would just be hilarious if just Kansas, the disappointing season, they just end up winning the Big 12 tournament. Like they just put themselves on top. Like I feel like Bill Self always finds a way. If it's not the regular season, it's gonna be the postseason tournament that he like puts another one on his resume. It has that feeling a little bit, even with some of like the injuries and stuff like that.
It always finds a way to balance it out. So, I don't know. Kansas, they feel like the least underdog, but I could see them getting hot there. Let's talk about our matchup that we're pumped about.
Yep.
TCU. You mentioned, I mean, OU fans, we all know. I think it's a weird mix of pessimism just in general, but also like where this team was projected last year and what we've seen overall is positive. There are a couple issues that are annoying and all this, but I feel like overall our mood is positive. I know your mood specifically. You're pretty. I think among the TCU basketball faithful, you seem to be a little bit more radical than others.
Yes,
that you do not like Jamie Dixon, or as we refer to him as Jim Dixon. What are your thoughts with Dixon? Kind of a disappointing-ish year, I think.
I know, yeah. That's always been my thing. It's like the TCU fan base, feel like in general is split two ways. You love Jamie Dixon because he kind of brought some success to a TCU basketball program, which was horrendous. It was horrible. My freshman year, we were playing, granted, it was because of a stadium renovation, but we were playing in a high school gym. We were playing in the Fort Worth ISD high school gym, and that's honestly probably where that team belonged because they sucked. Like, they couldn't field competitive games. And so it's like, when you compare TCU basketball from there to now, it's improved tenfold. It's like the fact that we are able to make the tournament potentially 3 years in a row, something that feels like it probably hasn't happened since the dawn of time for TCU basketball. Like a back-to-back was rare. I think the last one we saw was maybe the 80s. So you don't see that much. So the optimistic fans, I think, see this as, oh, this is a win. This is a win in the grand scheme of TCU basketball, which they are correct about, but the one thing they're not correct about is like actually evaluating the expectations and the standards year to year. We were projected to finish fourth in the Big 12, I believe, this year at the start of the season, and it's because we have a senior laden team. Like, and so I don't know if you wanted to interject there,
Oh,
but
I was
yeah.
saying you finished fifth, or you were projected to
Fifth.
fifth.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we were projected to finish fifth. We end up being, what was it, eighth, ninth, at the end of the year. In this kind of like weird, like middle of the bracket matchup. It just feels disappointing whenever you start to go down our schedule and see the opportunities that we could have clearly won. We had like one that we were robbed by Kansas at the beginning of the season, but then talk about the ones where it just like feels like we come close, like we played Iowa State close at the end, but allowed that game to get out of hand early because we were just turning the ball over. An OT loss at Cincinnati, which felt like we had in the bag. Texas Tech on the road, we were close. It just also too, it felt like we never played well at home, which is just sad. We finally have interest. We finally have fan support that are coming to the games. So in my mind, we had our best team, I think, under Jamie Dixon and his entire tenure at TCU. We still have never won 10 conference games. We still ended up 9-9, which is like tied for his best. It just feels like something is flat. And then also at the same time, it just makes me mad. It's like the reason why TCU's on the bubble, like they have a resume just like conference resume like OU that puts OU very firmly in the conversation. Our problem is we schedule nobody in the non-conference. It's like our best game was against Nevada, and we got slaughtered by Nevada. Next one you're going to Georgetown. They are the second worst team in the Big East, and the only one worse than them is DePaul, who like doesn't even look like a basketball program this year. So yeah, like I think I am naturally pessimistic. I really just kind of hate watch this team now more than really enjoy it, but I think there is some, if you strip away some of like the actual bias to it, there is some validity in being like this year was really disappointing for a year that we had a great squad, and next year we are losing 11 guys off of our roster. 11. So and we don't have that many coming in.
Well, I think that's the thing that has to be frustrating if you're a TCU fan is the most rare, valuable thing you can have in college basketball is longevity and
Yep.
consistency. And when you have a veteran laden team, it's hard to even get guys to stay in one place for 4 years, or for multiple years to get them to that senior point in general is pretty impressive, with everything going on with portal and the NIL. So that has to be very frustrating. And I think in inverse, that's one of the reasons why I think OU fans, some of the more rational ones aren't really pissed off about, what happened with the Sooners this year. Porter Moser has not had any consistency year to year with his roster. It's been turnover. And it's something we desperately need to have fixed. But this year, kind of a ragtag group of guys that panned out pretty well, had a great non-conference, of course, but just kind of, as they always kind of tend to do, fall apart a little bit in the Big 12 grind. I think they have done enough to get into the tournament. I think that
so. Yeah.
they have a tournament resume. I don't think there's anything that could really happen to get them out. If they're not in the tournament, it's a massive snub. That's my thoughts on that. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where, the Moser experiment, it's these little details that annoy the hell out of you. His teams are weirdly undisciplined. Turnovers and like, really bad, dumb positions. Fouls that are unnecessary, out of nowhere. They don't play like you would think. Porter Moser would have a pretty disciplined team, but they just kind of aren't. And I think that kind of falls on the coaching on that end. But I don't know. It's an interesting team. They've had a lot of ups, a lot of downs. I feel like they've been very close to breaking something open. Like they'll have like a really big game against Texas, and then they just lose at home, or they have a good Kansas game set up and they fall apart. Probably the best game of the season was a Houston game where they got buzzer beat, essentially. So it's one of those things where they're just this close to breaking this thing open, but just can't quite get across the line in the Big 12. And I gotta say, even though the SEC is a great basketball conference, I feel like the Sooners are about to kind of find themselves in an easier position. And, hand up, I'm okay with that.
Yep, it's gonna be just a little bit like you're right. The SEC probably is the third best basketball conference this year, like even more than the Big Ten. Like I think there's some solid, like there's still solid programs there, but when you only have to worry about, and especially with the size, like maybe Kentucky or Tennessee only once a year, and then you kind of get everybody else, like that's a lot better than what some of the Big 12 grind can be, where you'll somehow play like Houston, Kansas, Texas, and like then you'll get your freebie with like West Virginia. I think there'll be a little bit more like, okay, you can pad it a little bit with your Mizzou's, your LSU's, your South Carolina's been a little feisty this year, but like Georgia still exists there. Vanderbilt sucks. So yes, I think OU fans should be very happy. I think the move in basketball favorable, baseball probably not so much. But
Yeah.
but yes, you.
Baseball is tricky because the infrastructure is not there, but I think Skip Johnson has a good team,
Yeah.
and I think he's really good at getting guys in the building, getting things together. And, I don't want to go on a diversion here, but this past weekend series against UCF was really, really impressive. I thought just beat a team that had a lot of momentum, beat Florida. I think UCF beat Florida midweek. And then, roll into Norman and get swept in an emphatic fashion with those last two games. So, OU baseball. I'm just saying, folks, if you're bummed out on OU basketball, softball's great. I saw Love's Field this weekend. It's beautiful. It's incredible. Got to get out there if you can. Baseball's going to be fun. There's stuff to look forward to in the spring. So, and all of that, OU women's basketball has been remarkable. Jenny B
just beat us the other day. Yep. Yesterday I watched that game. Just really good. Really good.
Incredible. Yeah. Back-to-back Big 12 champs after a crappy non-conference, run. So she might be one of Castiglione's best hires ever, I think. That's how good she's been cooking, with those girls. So like there's plenty of things to look forward to and be excited about. And overall, this is nothing to scoff at. And you just kind of hope that things keep going in the positive direction for Moser and OU. But plenty of other Big 12 teams to talk about. We talked about how TCU kind of felt like a little bit of a disappointment, but let's talk about Texas. They're the 7 seed, but they kind of had to scrap up to get there. This was a team that was really highly ranked in preseason. Not very good.
Nope.
Not very good this season. They're just they've had moments where they go off, but overall, not very good.
I think Rodney Terry's just not the guy there. It's one of those. It's the classic. You hire the interim, the guy that kind of like steadies the ship after a very like tumultuous year. Like last year, Texas was just like supposed to be just as good, and then once the Chris Beard stuff happens, because Texas right now doesn't lack talent. It's like Dylan Disu, I think, made first team All Big 12 this year. Max Abmas is a fantastic player. Everybody knows that, especially if you're from Oklahoma. Like, he made Oral Roberts relevant for the last few years and kind of like a must-watch player. Tyrese Hunter, guy from transfer from a few years ago from Iowa State. Like, they have the talent there. They have the senior leadership. It just feels like the coaching is off. It's like, just can't get them through those big moments. It's like Houston. I remember watching that game whenever they played them at home. It's like they had a gritty performance, came back when Houston was just drowning them in the first half. And it just feels like they can't make those like the final few adjustments in order to put themselves over the top. And so like, sure, yes, they're going to be a March team. Like, basically everybody TCU up in the Big 12 is going to probably make March Madness. But it just feels like they go on stretches. It's always like, they haven't had that one big game skid where it's like you lose 3 or 4 in a row and then get them back. It's just like they're undisciplined on a night-to-night basis. And the offense has been really good, but defense lacking. I feel like Rodney Terry, I don't think he's going to last long. I really don't. I think he's not going to last long in Austin.
That's the thing, is sometimes guys just get hot and go on the run, and they're just not it. Once you lose that momentum, it just isn't the same. And maybe that's the case with Terry. But
Yeah. It's
we'll
not
see.
like he's the interim that came in on a young team that was like sucking. They fired their coach mid-season and then had to turn it all around. It was like last year he had a very, very legit senior laden roster and like took them like granted far in the tournament, but like don't it's always bad tournament success. Never ever ever hire your coaches. You rather have the coach that can always position you well in the regular season, not just get hot for a few weeks, but like always position well in the season. And it's just Rodney Terry's like Rodney Terry's job before that was head coach at UTEP where he got fired. It's just like those aren't going to be the ones that lead those like big programs like Texas like to the promised land. It's like you didn't really find a diamond in a rough. You found a guy, a very nice guy, great personality, really like probably was a solidifying force last year, but he just can't coach. Like that's the thing. At the end of the day, it's like he probably just can't coach at the level that the Big 12 is right now.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a tough league. And Texas gets to escape as well, so that's nice. That's nice for them. Any more? Do we want to talk about BYU fifth seed,
Yeah.
which is still crazy to me because I feel like they're not as good, not that good. I know their record is what it is. I know that they've like overachieved, but it's still wild seeing them there because I mean we saw OU handle them pretty solidly at the Lloyd Noble Center. I don't. Maybe I'm just not a. I think I'm a ball not knower in this case because I haven't watched him enough. But I don't know. It's kind of crazy that they ended up fifth after being projected essentially last in the Big 12. They got hot, made a run. It's got to say of the newcomers, Houston, you kind of expected this, but like
Yep.
I think BYU might be newcomer of the year. Honestly.
They did really they did pretty solid with the Big 12 schedule. They just got really hot at the beginning of the season, which boosted them like way up into these advanced analytics rankings. Like I probably side more with you, Bobby. It's like when I watch this team, I see a very like streaky variable team that it's like yes, they can beat anybody because they can shoot lights out, but they can also lose to anybody because they just rely so much on the three ball. It's like on a game to game basis that's gonna do you well, but it's like can you string it together for multiple games in a tournament scenario? Like that play style worries me. They're just like they're the advanced analytics darlings. Like they are I think 16 right now in Kimpom. And I know they're ranked right now, but it's just like if you look at them, it's just some of their losses, like they weren't necessarily lights out in the Big 12, like conference play. They did well. They beat some good teams. Lost to some they lost to OSU. Like that's bad. They lost to OSU by 10. Even though it's an away game, it's just they play a variable, streaky, very statistical. I guess like what people criticize the NBA about. It's a kind of a statistical brand of basketball where it's like yes, 3 points is worth more than two, but it's like when the moment comes down, I'm like very curious to see how this BYU team actually reacts when it's like oh people are stepping up, they're not giving you space on the threes. You got to hit the hard shots and you got to hit a lot of them, and that's been your brand all year. It just like it worries me. It's like in the Big 12 tournament, sure, they might do fine. I have a bad feeling March Madness, they're just not going to go far.
It reminds me that one year Wofford was really good, and I really wanted them
Yep.
to go far, and they just never.
Fletcher McGee.
Fletcher McGee. Postseason basketball always tightens up. It
Yep.
always grinds down. And look, if you're an OU fan, you actually have to be kind of positive about that because they're pretty good at winning or at playing in mud fights. But with BYU, yeah, that seems like a disaster for them. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so we've talked about kind of. I feel like BYU. I don't know if they can go on a run. Really, I don't. I
They're
don't
kind of
think they're quite there.
they have a tough road, like especially in like this tournament. It's like they're gonna probably play UCF, and UCF seems to be playing like very hot right now in the sense that they're like they just seem to be punching above their weight. So like I don't think that game's easy. I don't think Tech is ever easy, and then even if you get past that, you're probably getting Houston. So it just feels
Yeah.
like they can win maybe a game, maybe two, but semifinals is about the best you can think about them making.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic about anybody in this in the Wednesday group. I mean,
Nope.
K State being 10th, like K State usually can go on a run, but I'm not feeling them right now at all this year. They've
Vibes are
been
off there.
disappointing.
Vibes are off. I know they love Jerome Tang like no other. Jerome Tang is secretly just like or not secretly, he's my least favorite coach, I think, in the Big 12. If I don't include my own, he whines so much. I know all these coaches that's kind of their brand. Every college coach are always whining, you're always complaining about something, but it seems like there's stories every single time that he complains. He's like, I feel like always been like, we don't storm the court, we don't do this, like this is unclassy that people do it, and yet he's like crowd surfing in the stands after like a big win and stuff like that. It just feels like I don't know, it just feels off. Like he has a problem with every fan base when he goes on the road. He has a problem with how they act, how it's this. He kind of has that like Coach K complainy attitude about like every nitpicking thing, but like Coach K can get away with it because he's the best college basketball coach or one of the best of all time. So it just Jerome Tang is like, this is his second year head coaching ever.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to compare it to, and I'm not going to compare it to the situation in Texas because with Perry, but also like, you know, maybe that's both of those guys had really tough second years, and I'm interested to see. It's always interesting to see how you handle, the year after the letdown. You have your big run, you have your letdown. What do you do after? And I think Tang is in a situation where I'm very intrigued about that. But
yeah, I feel a little bit like Tang. They still play defense and like they still play for him. It's just they can't shoot the ball to save their life, which is like surprising because Tyler Perry was probably one of my favorite transfer guards and was incredible at UNT and put the team on their back like to win an NIT championship last year. And like he's played well, but like I thought he was going to be an easy. It's like point guard on the first team like Big 12 ballots, Tyler Perry, because I felt like that was just the perfect replacement for Marquise Noel, but maybe like both Terry and Jerome Tang were just like kind of victims of they had really great teams that just carried them. And it's like the March Madness success. That's why never evaluate your teams on how far they can get into March. Like that's the Shaka Smart experiment all over again. It's like, yes, he was a pretty decent coach at VCU, but it's like he had one magical run and everybody kept hiring him based off of that. It still really hasn't done much with Marquette. Like he still hasn't like he's done great like regular season at Marquette, but hasn't been able to take him far.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to some of the teams we'll find in the quarterfinals, our last kind of group here. So I got to ask, of this group, number 1 Houston, number 2 Iowa State, number 3 Baylor, and number 4 Texas Tech, who do you think is most likely to get upset on their first in their first game?
I think it has to be Baylor. Not only with matchups, but Baylor's been playing a really streaky, just a really interesting brand of basketball. It's like can be very entertaining to watch. It's like Ray J. Dennis, Jacoby Walter, like they're fantastic on the offensive end, like top 5 in the nation. They just refuse to play defense. It's like kind of what made the Baylor national championship team so good is they had these elite guards and wings and forwards that can shoot the ball, but they also like try hard on the defensive side. They don't really have like a Mark Vital type that gets in there that's like a spark plug and energy guy. They just seem to like they've beaten some of the best. It's like they've beaten Texas, TCU, Kansas. Like they've beaten a lot of those like good to like top tier ones, and even took Houston to overtime. It's just they don't play defense, and so like they can allow teams to just like creep back in. Like I remember I went down there to check out their new arena, and like they are way better than Cincinnati, but just allowed Cincinnati to just kind of like always stay within 8 to 6 points, and then when it came to the end of the game, like if they hit like 2 threes in a row, it's like, oh, it's a tie game. They just can't close teams out. So most likely for me in that quarterfinal round of those teams, I think Baylor's my prime candidate.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't close teams out, that is prime for getting beat. Letting because you can keep them at arm's length, but get a couple threes in, you're screwed. You find yourself in a tough position. They have to scramble back from. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that feels like a recipe for a tough one, especially against like Kansas. Like,
Yeah.
8:30 game, late night, in Allen Fieldhouse East, essentially. Old Johnny Furphy maybe hitting a couple threes, get a little crazy. That's not a good position to be in. So, yeah, go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, it's like because I look at the other ones, it's like you get the favorable matchups, you get the good stuff. It's like Iowa State. I feel like Iowa State, this is their home away from home. Do not, I'm telling you, do not, when we do the March Madness pod next week, we cannot have Iowa State going far. I'm tired of believing this team in March. They are home merchants. They are home merchants. They love their little friendly confines up in Ames, Iowa. But if they ever have to go on the road, if they ever have to play on a neutral site where it's like an actual neutral site, not this Kansas City stuff where they all drive down, they all like they're I guess nobody in the like state of Iowa has jobs because they can just all drive down for like this random conference tournament, regardless if they're the last seed, the first seed, they're always there. And they always do well there. They always disappoint in March. I know it. I know it. They play great defense. They're fantastic on defense. They've been an incredible watch. Home merchants, though. They're gonna get sent to like San Diego, California, and lose in like the round of 32.
Even that year when they were like absolutely abysmal, they were somehow good in Kansas City.
Yep.
Like when they like won. They won like maybe one or two games, maybe went winless. I can't remember. It was one of those just like absolute like very rare, never happens to Iowa State, but they still like showed up, rolled out, painted Kansas City, cardinal and gold. I think partially some of it is this is just kind of like their OU Texas. Like they live for this, and it's kind of incredible, and it's one where you can't, you can't be too positive about it. Or you can't be too positive about them getting upset unless they like run into Kansas. They're looking at like like Texas or K-State. They're better than both. K-State, yeah, whatever, but yeah, I think they're fine. Tech, I mean, maybe that feels like less of an upset though, because although you got BYU or UCF OSU, and I think Tech's kind of solid. So
yeah,
but we wouldn't be shocked about that. I don't think.
Yeah, like Tech is a truly like I'll give them their flowers that I rarely do on this podcast. Like Tech's done a really good job this year. It was like they've kind of had a rough go of things in the last few years. It's like you lose your coach, you fire your coach, and like you almost won a national championship a few years ago. Like you have cemented yourself as probably like a rising college basketball power, and they just do it again. They found a guy. Like I was always a Grant McCasland guy, like UNT. I was always so impressed with those teams. That's what he was like my number one guy when I was like, fire Dixon, like hire this guy. Like if you really want defense, grind it out, like can coach. This guy knows how to do it, and Tech got gifted just I think a great young guy. Hopefully, I want Tech to be good. I like it when it's good. I like when there's juice in our rivalry. I like when it feels like a battle every time we play. So I hope he doesn't get hired there. Like it kind of sucks when it's like you laugh at your rivals, but like I also want to see like them to actually establish something. Like at least with OSU in the last few years, it's like it's been a little bit more fun that they have a football coach that's like always identifiable with the program. You're going against them versus like say if they were just like a revolving door that their coaches were always getting poached and having to like string together seasons. I don't know, just makes it more fun.
I get that. Yeah, I get that. Okay, let's bring up Houston.
Yep.
Houston, what a remarkable job from Kelvin Sampson and his staff there, winning the Big 12 year one. I think everyone naturally had a little bit of like trepidation about, let's see how they like perform in a full Big 12 season. It's not the American anymore. And they put all those concerns to rest with this performance. They looked great from front to back. They are a dynamic, great defensive team. If you're an OU fan and you only saw them, in Norman, then you wouldn't know that. But that was the outlier of all outliers of performances for the Houston Cougars this year. Do you think they have a chance to win the national championship? Like,
Yep.
like
Yep.
they're Kelvin Sampson. His big thing is he's never great in tournaments. Like in the big dance, he'll make little runs, but he won't get you.
His
He'll
best
get you to
run to
like
the
the final
final
four
four,
once.
yeah, like the best run to the final four, like if you go back and look at that bracket, he was gifted every single thing along that till he had to play Baylor and then just got like slapped by them. Like you are right, it's like struggles in March, but this team has kind of like shut me up. I was always like, Houston's a really good team, but Houston plays in the American, so it's like easy when you're shutting down Tulsa twice a year and UCF at the time, like Memphis, like even Memphis. I'm like, that's your best matchup, like every year. A Memphis team that always seems to like not hit their ceiling. I'm like, you kind of have an easy path, but they shut up the haters this year that came out to the Big 12, like kind of got like their teeth punched in like early because they played West Virginia, then played Iowa State, TCU back to back, lost. And I was like, oh, here we go. I'm like, they were just feasting on those non-conference opponents, but now they have to play Gauntlet, and then have just been stunning along the way. They've only lost one. It was at Kansas. Like, I don't blame anybody for losing at Kansas. That's fantastic. But Jamal Shed is like, what he's an awesome player. It's like if you haven't watched much Houston ball, like they're top 15 in offense, but they're the best defense in the nation, bar none. Like it's not even close. It's watching them, it's like the advanced metrics back it up, the eye test. It's like they are one of those teams that like when I see TCU and they really like gum up the passing lanes and create turnovers and fast break opportunities, they do it at just the most elite level. It's just insane to watch. It's like Jamal Shed, he won Big 12 Player of the Year. He also won Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. It's like those guys are so good. They can shoot lights out. They can defend like no other. It's like when you get that Houston team was already going to be good. Lost two or three, I believe, like starters or key role minute guys at the beginning, but then you get a transfer in with LJ Cryer, who's been around the Big 12 forever at Baylor. They're just a fantastic watch, and like I might be biting my tongue in a few weeks if they get upset like in the first or second round, but it's just their style of play. They're consistent enough on offense with their defense just always mucking things up. It's like no team I feel like can get really hot against this team or just kind of like randomly like knock them off or catch them sleeping just because their identity is it's like they are going to put the pressure on you. So it's like even in their bad shooting performances, they're always within 2, 3, 4 points.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, they're well rounded as hell. Because they just like again, even with that OU game, they they were giving up way more points than they ever do, but they have the shot making to keep anything close. You know, they don't play. They don't only just play one way. They're insanely versatile. They're tough nosed, and I mean, Blake, you know as well as anybody, the thing that wins you tournament games is defense,
Yep.
and the ability, and not only that, but when your defense fails, to have the ability to make big shots down the stretch. They feel like a perfectly crafted tournament team, and I know I feel like I'm jinxing Kelvin and all them to hell here, but they're just as constructed, look as good as any, and as set as any to make a deep run in March Madness for sure.
Yeah, because it's a year we've kind of mentioned it on the last like few I guess basketball podcasts that this year is going to be a strange year because I feel like about 20 teams can win the national championship just based on like looking at how March Madness sometimes the balls can bounce, and if you only have two or three elite teams in the nation, like those balls can bounce easily that somebody the 20th best team could win this. But Houston puts themselves in a great position that I don't think UConn, which has had like some health issues, but I think UConn and Houston are by far the best. And then Purdue right below it. It's like Purdue's great, but we know the history with Purdue. It's like, show me first. It's like, I'm going to have them far in my bracket, but they could easily bust it.
Right. Let's see you beat
That's the thing.
the Fairleigh Dickinsons of the world.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And it's, but yes, I feel this game is too complimentary to like having to string together games, and great, like that's the cool part about it. It's like Houston's 3 losses in the conference, 2 of them were back to backs. It's like they go on long winning stretches, which is what you need. You don't see that much like, oh, you had a down spot here, you came back. No, they just like consistently perform. It's like you can randomly beat them maybe on one night. That happens in the tournament all the time. But like I think how we've seen their season is they just string together wins, and a lot of them at that.
Yeah, which is exactly what you need to do. You know, you can't you can't take any losses. You can't. Obviously in tournament play, you gotta win and win and win and win. And Houston has been excellent at that. So I don't know. I feel like we might have them in. I might project them to be in Phoenix for early April here. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, well, we've talked about basically everyone, Blake.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up. Who do you think is going to win it?
I don't want to be. I don't want to be boring. I think like Houston's gonna win it. I think this has a feeling. I'm gonna go Kansas. I think they have a easy weird path. We've seen them on the home court advantage be able to beat Houston. I think Houston's probably gonna be it, but it's like to be fun. I'm gonna choose Kansas. You got some favorable matchups first round. Play Baylor the next round. That's could be a toss up, and then you'll probably have to play Iowa State, but could lead. That's honestly like if you're looking at the Big 12 tournament, a dream. Like if you want to see like a good atmosphere at a neutral site game, Kansas Iowa State would be fantastic. So I think it's going to be Kansas Houston in the championship game, and then I'll go Kansas. Just that little home field bump to get us like a little bit more excited about them going into March.
If Dickinson and McCullers are healthy,
Yep.
then I think I'm with you. I could see them getting really hot. This just feels primed for a Bill Self moment. Um, However, I'm gonna go with Iowa State. I'm gonna go with Iowa
Okay.
State here. I feel like the home field advantage is there. They get up for this tournament more than anything. And Houston, not only distance wise is far away, but as we've noted, they do not have fans. They do not exist.
They do not. I look at their basketball arena, still stunned how small it is for like a big school that has like big basketball tradition. It's still stunning to me.
Yeah, I mean, pretty legendary basketball tradition.
Yeah.
Phi Slamma Jamma, they've done stuff. It's kind of weird, but that's what happens when you're a commuter school. So, yeah, but yeah, I think that's pretty much all we have for this one. I'm excited to see how everything shakes out. In terms of bids to the NCAA tournament, who are we really looking at on the bubble that we should be concerned about?
TC
I'm
is the
guessing
only
your
one.
frogs.
Yep,
Yeah,
TC's the only one. I think I have Joe Lenardi's like most recent one, and we're like the second to last team on like the last four buys. I'm a little bit more worried. I know these guys are pros; they get the field right basically almost to 100% each time. It's just TCU's non-conference schedule is concerning. The only things you have to buoy it though is like you have wins versus Houston, you have wins versus Baylor, like close one versus Iowa State. You have beat Tech, so you've beaten three of the top four of the Big 12 at some point. So that has to hold some weight and like probably pushes them like they do. It's like the teams that would threaten a TCU are those good mid majors that get left out because they lost their conference tournament. And like I'm a big mid-major guy. It like sucks. Like it's gonna suck if like a New Mexico and Indiana State doesn't make it just because they're like a smaller brand, and it's because of like a school like TCU that it feels like kind of gamed the system with their non-conference schedule and just padding in wins. It always makes me sad that it just feels like this tournament is always like they don't want to see these, like they would rather see a 16-16 ACC team over a 27-5 like mid major. It's
yeah,
just really sad.
it is because usually the 27-5 mid major is way more interesting.
Yeah. They usually have tons of seniors. This is the guys like final ride. It's like I would rather give them a chance than like some freshman or sophomore Big Ten team that had some, like, yes, they won a big game, but like continue to be streaky and like can't find some consistency. It's like I do, even though you have to, I know at the end of the day, evaluate the competition they played and stuff like that. I like to see teams that consistently win regardless of who they're playing, not just because the fact that like they randomly were able to get a win here, win there, like against opportune opponents, and that's what puts them in. I like to see consistency, streak building. I like to see that part of the basketball game.
Yeah. Well, hey, hopefully your Frogs get in. It's always more fun, having your teams have some skin in the game. I know how that feels. With the Sooners being out recently, that's been a bit of a bummer, but looking like they should be in. So hopefully your Frogs are in as well. But also that might mean you have to beat us to get in, so maybe not.
Yeah. I think whatever happens with our game, I think it's going to be Lambs to the slaughter next one. Houston on the rest.
That's going to be bad. Because OU, even though they played them tight the first one, they got their one shot in. I don't think that's going to happen.
We beat them, and I'm like, no, that was our one time. That was our one time.
You got the one. Not like we got lucky because it was Kelvin's staff, most of them played at OU, it feels like. So they're all emotional and, Kelvin flat out was like, yeah, this is a different, like this game is, bigger than, a normal one. So they kind of took the bait a little bit. And I don't know if that actually had an effect on the players themselves or not, who mostly were barely alive for the 2002 Final Four.
But
it's
been a while.
but anyways, we had our shot. I don't think we're going to get back at them again. So either way, both of our teams are probably walking towards their doom. So I gotta say, gonna miss the Big 12 tournament. Sad I wasn't able to make it out there for this one. Been to a couple. Always a blast in KC. And I'm happy it's staying in KC because it belongs there.
Yeah. Not Vegas.
Not Vegas.
Not like a certain fan base that is joining the Big 12 really wants it. And I'm like, there's like 5 conference tournaments in Vegas, it feels like, at that point of the year that actually probably deserve to be in Vegas because they're West Coast conferences.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, do not send it to Vegas.
Vegas, no.
KC is just such a great spot for that. And, I'm going to miss it. I don't know where the SEC, I think, rotates around, usually in Nashville, but I've seen them play it all around. Hey, maybe
I feel like Nashville's a perfect spot. Like it's a perfect. It's bigger than KC, but like kind of occupies a similar. Like it's not too big of a city. That it seems like it's just like you get drowned out when you're there. But I just feel like it's meant to support large influxes of people. So
yeah, I mean it's a great event city, and once they build the new Nissan Stadium, it'll be there for college football as well, and. That's nice. I mean, that's nice. It's fine. I it's not going to feel the same, and that's okay. Yeah. But yeah. So I'm going to soak up this last Big 12 tournament while I can. So, anyways, I don't know how our future coverage of these events will be, but we'll figure something out.
We'll figure something out. Maybe it's more of a generic just
conference tournament dive.
Conference tournament week with a heavy focus on schools in this region and how they're going to perform.
We'll figure it out. We're still working on it, but it's going to be some blend because, I mean, look, let's be honest. We know too much about the Big 12 to... I know too much about the Big 12 to just move on. No.
Yeah.
No, I can't just. That knowledge needs a home somewhere. So we'll work on figuring out what that'll be. But yeah. Well, Blake, always good talking college hoops with you. Excited for next week's show. It's going to be insane. Our combined bracket is always one of the longest show. The
longest show, no doubt.
It is like the size of Dune every year.
It is like by the time we get halfway through the bracket, I think it might already be our longest show type of thing. Like halfway through the first round. Yeah, the halfway through the first round. Sorry, not the bracket as a total. Just the first round of the bracket.
It's like exhausting. You're like fighting for your life in it. It's magical. I love it. I feel like it's not like a highly performing pod, but I also do not care because I have a good time. Yep. That's something we're all just working on, just having fun. So, anyways, thank you all so much for listening to our Big 12 basketball tournament preview. We'll be back next week to break down a little bit more of the March Madness. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun. I'm excited about that. And then, of course, hey, spring football starts tomorrow, so we'll finally have a little bit more football news and nuggets, coming soon. So thank goodness for that. Anyways, we'll see you next time. On behalf of me and Boatin Blake, thanks again. Have a good one. Good luck out there, and Boomer Sooner, everybody.